Back in December, the bishop came here to install me as pastor of St. Paul's. Pastor is an official office of the church given by the bishop to a priest who is supposedly outstanding in sound doctrine and integrity of morals, to a priest who is endowed with a zeal for souls and for virtuous living. The suitability of this priest should be clearly evident to others. Now, whether any or all of this is true is a matter of debate. Nevertheless, the bishop came and gave me this beautiful gift, this beautiful opportunity. And with this role comes certain rights and responsibilities, among which is to govern, to teach, and to sanctify the people, those who are entrusted with his care. A few weeks after the installation, I was spending some time with some of my priest friends who roundly chastised me. They were mad that I did not invite them to that Mass. I didn't even let them know about the appointment. Part of the reason is just due to my shyness. I don't often offer unsolicited facts about my life. But perhaps even more to the point, one of the reasons that I did not share with them this new role that the bishop had given to me is because I had such a narrow, limited, shallow understanding of what it was. I reduced it and minimized its sense of worthiness, or what in fact it was entailing in my responsibility here. I saw it as nothing more than what I had been doing already. There was no change. I was still responsible for keeping the buildings upright, the air condition running, and the lights on. Doing some of those things more successfully than others. But was I wrong in my definition? Is being a pastor more than just administration? Is it more than just making decisions for the proper and right ordering of things? In both our first reading and our gospel today, we hear about such high-profile appointments. The prophet Isaiah tells us about Shebna, the master, this royal steward over the kingdom, who is deposed from his position, and in his place is elevated Eliakim. The evangelist Matthew relates to us how Jesus appoints Simon as vicar of his church, and how he gives him a new title, Peter, with this new office. Now, as an aside, both of these readings are the Old Testament and the New Testament evidence for our Pope in the Roman Catholic Church. And we read there how both of these men were given keys. Keys were a sign of power and authority, to open and to shut, to bind and to loose, to set people free and to hold them fast. Now, certainly a part of their responsibilities was the administration, the day-to-day care of the kingdom and of the church, to make sure that everything was governed, everything was properly ordered. But their tasks were not reduced to, they weren't exclusive to such things as this. As important and as necessary as they were, this was not the most important thing that they were to do. Okay, then what is? In that first reading, we hear Eliakim is called a peg in a sure spot. It is that place on which others can securely hold themselves fast. Peter is another name for a rock. It is that sure foundation on which others can stand. They are not called boss or master or ruler. In fact, this is the very reason why Shebna was deposed from his position. It was for selfishness and self-service. In a few more verses in the gospel, we would hear Peter admonished from Christ himself, calling him Satan for asserting his will over the will of God. These men were not called to be tyrants over and before others, but rather they were to be the sure and reliable foundation behind which and beneath which others could be built up, that others could stand firm and hold strong. They were to be the anchor in the midst of storms. Now, these offices were bigger and beyond the men to whom they were given. And we know that they would fall short many times of their responsibilities. We hear that with respect to Peter throughout the New Testament. But nevertheless, these men were essential. God made them essential for his plan, for his people. Now, there's something very interesting here, and something that is not coincidental. Another name that can be given to these men in these three offices, the pastor of a parish, the steward of a kingdom, or the pope of a church, is father. There is a tight coupling. There is a narrow parallel between those who are given charge over an institution and those who are given charge over a household and over a family. Certainly that man who is meant to govern over a home is entrusted with the day-to-day responsibilities to make sure that that home stays upright, that the lights are on, and that the air condition is running. And as important and as necessary as these tasks are, they're not the most important or the most necessary. More important than putting funds into a bank, than putting clothes on a back, even more important than putting food on the table, is putting saints in heaven. Spending time raising money for the family is no exception from raising the family to the heights of holiness to which they are being called. The father of that family is not a master, not a ruler, and not a boss. He is not meant to be self-serving or self-centered. He is not called to assert his own will. He is not to be a tyrant over and in front of others, but rather to be a peg behind, a rock beneath, on which the other members of the family can build up to that sure and lofty stature to which God is calling them. This is the role in every family. We do not define and then give the term father to God. It is he who defines and then shares that term with us. Us, fathers, are allowed to share in the fatherhood of God so that others could know him and that his presence could be felt by our words, by our lives, by our actions, by the very witness of our presence to the world. The most heinous and grievous attack on heavenly fatherhood is the demise, the absence, and sadly the abuse of earthly fatherhood. How can we know his love if nobody shows us? How can we recognize his face or his voice if nobody teaches us? How do we know the way to him if there is nobody to lead us? Now, perhaps many of us fathers have made mistakes in the past, mistakes for which the guilt weighs heavy upon our shoulders, mistakes we have made with a generation perhaps that has already grown old. But chin up, man up, because there are more generations to come.